Hello and welcome to Wisdom Bites. Hope you're well. Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the 60-day cycle to see exactly where we are and continue the theme of where we think it may actually bottom out so that we can look at the next cycle and where it will begin more than likely in terms of the probabilities. We'll also have a look at the wider markets by looking at the SPX and seeing exactly what that's telling us of where Bitcoin might actually go in the short term. And I'm also going to look at this time, for the first time after over a year, I'm going to look at the Bitcoin dominance, because I keep getting asked the questions about the altcoin season, and what the Bitcoin dominance chart is showing right now is something very, very interesting, and you may want to take a very close look at this. So if that sounds interesting, then without further ado, get yourself a cup of tea, sit yourself down, relax, eyes on the screen, and let's get cracking. Okay, before we begin, the usual polite reminder, please remember everything in my videos is just for educational purposes, so please always do your wider research before you make any investment decisions or any swing trading decisions. Okay, since the last time we looked at this was a week ago, last Monday, and since then, if you look at this here, you can see quite clearly it hasn't really changed very much. The price action is still going very much sideways for the last few weeks. So I've marked this candle up here now as the 45-day bottom here, and this is the day 12 top over here. So we've obviously got a left translated cycle because the day 12 obviously topped out before the midway point. So now what we've got is a left translated cycle, which is absolutely fine, because in the upturn in a bull market you will get the odd left translated cycle. But the main thing to remember is that when you do get a left translated cycle, then the chances are, because we're in a bull market, the very high degree of probability would be for the next cycle to be the right translated cycle one more time, just like this one and just like this one. So in a way, it's actually very good to get this cycle out of the way. It's a downtrend, we're making lower highs and we're making lower lows. And so sooner or later, we're going to be breaking out of that and into the next 60-day cycle, which with a high degree of probability should be a right translated cycle. And that should fit into with the narrative that we've got of going into the next first peak after the bottoming out process at 15,400. So from this 45-day low over here, we're currently on day 42. So once again, we're coming into this window of opportunity, this window whereby we could easily bottom out. So we're not too far away from that. And that gives us a clue that if this price wants to fall much, much further, then it's had an opportunity here, it's had an opportunity here and over here, but it hasn't taken it. And once again, it came back to the 26,800, this neckline, this yellow line here. It's had these opportunities on this neckline and it's not taken it at the moment. And we're currently right on it one more time. So if it's really going to come back much lower than this green support line over here, then it needs to do that within the next few days in order to come back and bottom out at somewhere around here, which I would think is going to be around about the 23,000 mark. But as I've shown you in the last many videos, it doesn't appear that we should be going below the 25,200 because of the various indicators I showed you, which are very strong support levels. And we'll have a look at one or two of them once more today. The other thing to note here is that since we topped out here at 31,000, we've had a counter trend rally here, one more here, and in the last couple of videos I mentioned that we may well have another one while we're going into this 60-day cycle. So what we're doing is creating lower highs around here and the lower lows here. So we're still in this little channel which is coming down over here, but sooner or later this is actually a bull flag in the sense that when it breaks up, it will break out somewhere along here. So this is a good opportunity for it to break out to the upside in the window that we've got here of the 60-day cycle. So what it's done is, as I mentioned in the last week's video, that we really need to get above this green line for us to be confident that we've now broken out. And obviously it hasn't done that. It's come back straight down to the 26,800 level. So once again, it's a failed breakout with a counter trend rally. And this green line is proving very, very important and relevant all the way through. So we have to actually look at this and say that going forward, this is going to remain extremely important over here. So when we do break out to the upside, we need to extend this green line and see whether we can come back and recapture it, because without doing that we can't really get into the right translated cycle of the next 60-day cycle framework. And the support of this green line, this green channel, is also becoming more relevant, because as we're going into this, so as we're getting into this green line, the actual width of it is narrowing all the time, which means that the actual volatility is going to break out sooner or later within this channel. And it's looking increasingly likely that we're going to bottom out at the green line. So wherever it meets, so let's say if it meets over here, it's going to be around about 26,000. But what it looks like threatening is just going sideways. As I mentioned in last week's videos, that what we might have is a time-based 60-day cycle low here, whereby the market just goes sideways. And when that happens, we need to put on the Bollinger Bands to see exactly where the Bollinger Bands might be around this time here. So looking at the Bollinger Bands, we can see that the bottom of the Bollinger Bands is around about 26,200 and the top of the Bollinger Bands is around 28,000. So we made an attempt over here to get above them, but it was pushed down. So it looks like with these Bollinger Bands now flattening out and getting narrower and narrower, just like over here, whenever they get narrow, there's always a breakout. Just like over here, breakout to the downside, especially here. We had a big breakout to the upside, etc. So when they start narrowing out and going sideways and consolidating, then we can expect a big volatile move. And that plays into the hands of the 60-day cycle. So within the next 10 to 15 days, we should see a very big breakout, either to the upside or downside. And obviously, because we're at the end of the cycle coming in, we should see, with a high degree of probability, a big move to the upside here. The alternative narrative to that is that we've actually come down to the 25,800 twice here. And now that we're in the final phase of the end of the cycle here, the last 17, 18 days, then it would make sense to really test this level over here. So maybe in the next week or so, we may well come and do a triple bottom here. If we can find support on this green line or just around there, it may wick down below that to the 25.8. But should we break this, then that looks like that there's going to be a run down to the $23,000 mark, which should encapsulate this support line over here. So it should come back down to around about the $23,000 mark with this kind of action that took place over here, with a lot of support and resistance along here. And that would make it a clean cycle, so we know exactly that we've now bottomed out there and then we're now on the way up. But as I mentioned, with the Gaussian channel, once we get above this channel here on the 5-day chart, it's very rare that we would come back below that, and currently that's at 25,100, 25,200. So I'm not expecting that to come back down to that level. So to me, it looks more than likely that we're going to get a time-based 60-day low into the 60-day cycle, into the mid-June time period, and then take off from there. And if we have a look at the weekly moving averages, which are very important, we can see quite clearly here, we're finding very strong support once again on this very important 200 simple moving average. And the 20 is coming to cross over there, which means that we're going to have a bullish cross of the 21 going above the 200. And the other thing to note here is that the 50 simple moving average on the weekly chart is now turning back up again. So the averages are moving more and more in favor of the Bitcoin price. So it does lend to the narrative that we're going to find support on the 200. This is very bullish, and somewhere along the line we're going to find a big move to the upside here. The other indicator to keep a note on is always the Keltner channel. This is the KC Keltner channel. And if you ever put that on, you can see quite clearly, if you go back in history, it's very rare the price moves out of this band. And when it does, it's usually a very big move. So the last time it moved out of this channel was to the upside over here. And before that, it's when we had the FTX scandal, we moved to the downside here. But on the majority, you can see what we do is we respect within this channel over here. So you get the moves to the upside and few moves to the downside. But on the whole, it tends to stay within the realms of this channel here. And currently, the high of that is around 28.6. And the bottom of that is at 25.8. One more time, providing more confluence of the 25.800 being actually the bottom here, and maybe coming back the third time for a triple bottom over here. So it's anyone's guess what can happen, but I've shown you some of the indicators which are giving the actual probabilities more in favor, for me anyway, for the Bitcoin price to be going sideways. So this is what we call a time-based cycle low. So we may well bottom out on this green line around here at around 26.8 by going sideways for the next few weeks. So it's going to bore people, and this is when people make the bad decisions. When people get bored, they want to be active, and unfortunately this is where they make the biggest mistakes. And the main thing to look at really here, if you had to be looking at one thing, then keep an eye on this level here at 28.5. So when the price gets over here and we get above the 28, closer to the 60-day cycle, that's when we will know that the new cycle has begun. So keep an eye on the 28.5. This is leaving a marker there just for that reason, and that goes back to this level here obviously. So 28.5, once we break through that, that will give us a confirmation that the new cycle has begun, because it will be within the realms of the 60-day cycle time here. And that would really be bullish, because when the Bitcoin price had an opportunity to come back down, it didn't take it, which means that there are a lot of people desperate to move into Bitcoin and are not willing to wait for that price to come down. And once again, that augurs well for the next cycle to be a right translated cycle. We obviously have to be open to either eventuality. Therefore, we need to really exercise patience and discipline. And my expectation of a major peak before the next halving still holds at the 40 or possibly the 50,000 level, when I expect a big major correction and then a final recovery towards the April 2024 halving. And that's when we will get the parabolic phase to the end of the 2025 cycle. So what I want to do now is to look at the wider market to see if that's giving us a clue whether this narrative of mine here at the moment, that we may well go sideways into this 60-day low and then move to the upside. If we look at the SPX, we can see quite clearly we're making very bullish moves over here. We've gone above this neckline of the support here, resistance, and it's been resisting all along here for quite a while. So what you did get here was that, like over here, we got rejected very strongly, but when it came to this point, it hung around at this level, and then suddenly last week, it's actually moved to the upside over here. So currently we're coming to the next neckline up here based on these support and resistance points here. So we need to get above that, but it looks with a high degree of probability we're going to test this level here around the 4,320. So this is the level to look out for, and if we can get above that, that would be extremely bullish for the Bitcoin price as well. It may take a little time. The main thing to note here for the SPX is that we're making higher lows along the way and higher highs. So the actual trajectory is very much to the upside here. We will get some sort of rejection around these levels over here at around about 4,600. So that's another level to look out for. But until then, there's plenty of room to move to those levels here in the next few weeks and months. So this would suggest, with this bullish nature, and the SPX is quite well correlated to the Bitcoin price, that it may well be that in the next few weeks, this might just go sideways here and then take off after the 60-day cycle low has got in. So this gives us a very good clue of what may be happening, but certainly this is looking bullish, and that may well translate into the Bitcoin price in the next few weeks. So a quick overview of the strategy that I'm playing. So I like to share my strategy. Please remember, there are hundreds of strategies. They all work to whatever extent they work. And there's no one perfect strategy. And that's why I always say that people have to have their own strategy based on their own personal financial circumstances, and do what you think is right for you. All I can do is to share my strategy, and it may well be that it doesn't work. So all I would say is that, please always do your wider research, have a look at what other people are doing. And I feel as though this strategy, which has worked in the past, should work for me in the future. So currently my strategy is, as I've been mentioning many times since for many months now, is that we expect a peak, one major peak before the halving here with this red line. And in this window, anywhere around here, between 40 and 50,000, we should get one peak, then some sort of a correction, and then moving back up into the halving. And this is where you would expect a parabolic phase moving into the end of the cycle, anywhere around here at the end of 2025. And that could be at 100,000, it could be at 300,000. We don't know. All we can do is judge by exactly what the price action is telling us at the time. And that is based on, one, we have topped out in the peaks before, we always seem to have one or maybe two peaks before the halving, and then we move into the parabolic phase. Same here, when we got to the top here, the peak, we came back down, we had two peaks here before the halving, and then we had the parabolic phase. One more time here, it's exactly the same. The market follows the same pattern over and over again. So we topped out here at this peak, had one peak over here before this halving. Some would say that this was a second peak here, but once we got to the halving, that's when the parabolic phase started. So what we can expect is that we should be able to, with a high degree of probability, have at least one peak around these levels, around the 40 or 50,000. And once we get to that peak, just like this peak here, we had a big correction, this peak, one correction, two corrections here, another correction there, another correction here. So once we get to the peaks, we can expect a major correction and then a move into the halving here. And then that is the point where I would say that I would be very foolish not to actually put everything in at that point. From the halving, you're looking at a big move to the upside on a parabolic phase of the cycle. And it doesn't really make sense that once you get to the halving to start messing around with these movements. Once more here, it just pays to just keep in there, have some patience and discipline, and just ride it. And then we can use the pi cycle top and maybe a few other indicators to know where we are at the top over here somewhere. And that can be at the 100, 200 or 300,000. And I know I've been mentioning this strategy for quite a while, and I think it really pays to keep that in focus, because many times there are so many things to look at with the Bitcoin. You can forget the overall picture and get sucked into the shorter term picture and the emotions, which is what the Bitcoin price is designed to do in order to shake you in and out of the market at the wrong time. So in conclusion, what I would say is keep an eye on these two levels here. This is the $31,000 mark, and this is the neckline of the inverse head and shoulders that we've been talking about. So these are the really two levels where you wouldn't really expect the price to break below this, because we're in a bull market and we should find support. Just like over here, we have found support on this level. I wouldn't expect it to be breaking down, but if it does, obviously then it's got a long way to go, maybe down to the 20,000. However, the top line of this is the 31, so we are very much moving within the confines of this channel here between the 31 and the 25. And unless that breaks, we have no other narrative to say that it can do anything else except the 60-day cycle low here, and we would be expecting for a break to the upside as we are in a bull market here. Right, a quick look at the altcoins, and I'm going to look at the Bitcoin dominance. Currently, the Bitcoin dominance is around 47. Something interesting developing here. The last time we had an altcoin season was firstly down here in December 2020 over here, and it bottomed out around about May 2021, so about a 5 months altcoin season over here. So that was a gap of 3 years, and currently I would suggest that since we've had this neckline around here, around the 48 mark, so we've come here once, got rejected, twice got rejected, and now we're on the third go, but the actual movement here, that it doesn't seem to be wanting to come down just like over here, it's now gearing up to break out to the upside, the Bitcoin dominance, which basically means that Bitcoin is going to outperform the altcoins. So if I was holding altcoins, and please remember this is not financial advice, but certainly by just looking at this chart, it would tell me that we are more than likely, with a high degree of probability, going to break out here, which means that Bitcoin is going to outperform altcoins. So personally, I don't have any altcoins, but if I was holding them, it's something that I wouldn't be holding around here if this breaks out. Obviously, if it gets rejected here, then Bitcoin is going to underperform the altcoins. But since we're in a bull market, I would be expecting this to happen. And these things of the altcoin cycles here, I don't think this is going to come before the next halving, next April 2024. Because this one in December 2017 came after the 2016 halving, and this one here in 2020, in December 2020, came after the May 2020 halving. So it looks to me that these are timed to come after the halvings, and the halving is going to come all the way here. So around April 2024. So to me, it makes sense that we can have a Bitcoin dominance going into it over here, and then somewhere along the line here in this box we're going to get the altcoin season, if we are going to get one. There's no guarantee of it, of course. And many people ask me, why I don't hold the altcoins. It's simply because the Bitcoin miners, which are far more strongly related to Bitcoin, because they mine the actual Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin goes up, sooner or later, there may be a little delay, but sooner or later, the Bitcoin miners will catch up, and they will have more than likely a bigger parabolic move along with the Bitcoin to catch up. And the reason why I say that is that if you look at the bigger overall picture, we can see quite clearly when we compare Bitcoin with one of the major Bitcoin miners, which is Marathon over here. When we bottomed out here in the COVID situation, in the Marathon it was exactly the same. And then when we went on a parabolic move to the $64,000 mark, in the Marathon it was exactly the same over here. And then when we had the second peak over here, was exactly the same here. And one more time, when the price came back down, we bottomed out approximately about the same price here. Now, since then, obviously we've moved back up again over here. And so the price for Marathon is going in total alliance with the Bitcoin price. But there is one anomaly, and that is par for par, the prices for the Bitcoin miners are actually lagging behind in terms of the actual differential with the Bitcoin price. Okay, so if we compare like for like here, so back in August 2022, the price for Bitcoin reached around about 25,000 over here. So compared to that, the current price is at 26,800. So it's still a little bit higher than the 25,000. But when we compare that with the Marathon, the Bitcoin miner here, the high was at around 1880, and the current price from here is much lower at around about $10. So while Bitcoin's gone higher than the August price, the Bitcoin miners, and this is a similar picture for all of them, the Bitcoin miner here, Bitmarathon, is much lower over here. So there is going to be sooner or later a catch-up phase where this goes parabolic to catch up with the Bitcoin. After all, the Bitcoin miners are a leverage play. And we know that from these moves here, that when we came to the COVID situation down here, with the Bitcoin to the 64,000, this went up by 16x, while Marathon at the same point was up 156x. So you can see this is a leverage play, and it's only a matter of time before we have this leverage play coming into the domain of these Bitcoin miners. So this is the potential that I'm looking at. And if you want to come on our journey with the Bitcoin Miners Club here on this channel at Wisdom Bites, we have a private members club for which we do an exclusive video on every Wednesday, which covers the Bitcoin miners, because sooner or later they're going to have a leverage play massive move to the upside, and we cover all the technical analysis by comparing the Bitcoin with the Bitcoin miners and looking at some special features. And we also do a lot of swing trading on there. So if those are the things that you're interested in, all you have to do is to go below any of my videos here and click the join button here, or in the description box below, there is a click button to join here as well, where you can have access to joining the Bitcoin Miners Club here. Okay, so we'll leave it there. I hope you found value in the video. If you did, then please do remember to like and to subscribe and to turn on the notification bell. And if you have any comments, questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.